Hi, welcome to the Private Doctor's Lounge, where we delve into all things health and wellbeing with various experts from different medical fields. Today, we're going to be talking about obesity and weight loss jabs. I'm joined by Inder Virdi, functional medicine practitioner and nutritionist, and Myles, Ellis, personal trainer to CEOs and busy professionals. Now, we've all heard recently that obesity and overweight are increasing. So recent figures have shown that at least 60% of the UK population are overweight and 50% of them are actually obese. So it's a massive problem, only getting worse and worse. And this has led to an increase in the use of weight loss drugs, and these are actually now prescribable on the NHS.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why we're here today is because we're seeing so many people just taking the jabs and not considering the long-term effects afterwards. When they've lost the weight, what happens? Do they just resume back to their normal diet? Does the weight stay off? Generally speaking, no, the weight doesn't just stay off. They resume their normal diet and they come back to square one. That's why we're here today.
So what I found recently is that a lot of patients are coming to speak to me to be asked to be put on these drugs. Now, this is not a quick fix. It's not a magic bullet. And it's certainly not a long-term answer to help maintain a healthy lifestyle and a decent weight. People are coming to me expecting to get a holiday body or because they feel unhappy with the way they look. These drugs are not designed for that. They have side effects and they should be closely monitored. And essentially, if we're relying on people to use drugs, we're not instilling healthy habits into them. Recently, for example, I had a call from a pharmacist saying he had a patient come to him and say, I want to get these drugs. Can you just prescribe them to me? And the pharmacist said, Sahel, can you help this patient? I said, well, we need to do a consultation. We need to look into what their BMI is, what their other health issues are. So there's a whole host of issues related around the use of these drugs. And we need to look at how we can help people use these drugs at an initial point to help them start the journey, but what can they then do to really maintain that lifestyle going forward?
So the first question I would always ask a patient is, why do you want to lose weight? That is the most important principle. Why do you want to lose weight? And the reason being is most people who are overweight, who at least come to see me, overweight or obese, have accompanying symptoms. I've never met an obese person who doesn't have gut issues, an obese person who doesn't have issues with energy, potentially brain function, etc., etc. So it needs to be about optimizing your health first. That is what I say. Weight loss is a byproduct of a healthy lifestyle and ultimately enjoying your life. It is not a means to an end. Weight loss is a journey, not a destination.
I think that's so important, that what is the underlying issue that has made them approach you to help lose weight? So is it that they feel less energetic at work? Are they working towards an event or a holiday? Are they more sluggish? Are they worried about type 2 diabetes? Have they been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes? It's so important to look at that. And I think that will really help the motivation piece and the mindset piece of the patient looking to lose weight. It's not just, I've got to get from X kilograms to Y kilograms. It's, look, what is your motivation and what's the reason behind it? It's so important to think about that.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, I wish patients would come and see me and say, you know what, my doctor has just said that my HbA1c or my fasting blood sugar is too high. I need to get my stuff together. I wish that was the case, but more often than not, it is patients coming in and saying, my son is getting married, I'm going on holiday, as you said, there's some big event, and I want to fit into my old clothes. There is some sort of superficial aesthetic reason. And I say, fine. And the other thing they always say is, I want a 7-day meal plan. Give me a meal plan. Tell me what to eat. And I say, I can do that, but I promise you, in 2 weeks' time, you're going to be back to square one, because old habits die hard. You get stressed, things happen, life happens, and you fall back into old habits. That's what I see every single time.
And would you say is there a specific diet, carnivore, vegan, paleo, low carb? Is there a fix-all diet that will work for everyone?
So people like to think so. I mean, I remember the times sort of in the early 2000s, the Deacon diet, the Atkins diet, etc., etc. But the truth is, and this is far less convenient because I think people like a one-solution approach, but the truth is everyone is different and people can actually lose weight on a variety of diets. I think I mentioned earlier that there are some studies from the 50s and 60s where they fed patients literally just granulated sugar and butter, but they restricted the calories and these patients lost weight. So the answer to your question is, it entirely depends. People think that you have to go low carb, but in my experience, people lose weight on a moderate carbohydrate intake. But in general, as a rule of thumb, a nutrient-dense diet, rich in protein, rich in complex carbohydrates, tends to be or tends to achieve the best results, largely because the motto that I have is, if you look after the quality of your calories, the quantity takes care of itself. You will naturally, because these foods are because nutrient-dense foods are richer in fibers, you will feel fuller much faster and therefore eat less. But you will feel satisfied and satiated.
Yeah. So when you say nutrient dense, can you explain what that means for us?
So basically, anything that doesn't come out of a bag or a box, anything that is grown in the ground, so vegetables, probably the most obvious one. So everything from broccoli to cauliflower to legumes, peas, kidney beans, animal proteins of all kinds, fish, dairy products. Basically, that is what I class as a whole food. Something that has pretty much just come from the ground or come from the animal.
And Myles, what about training and exercise? Is it true to say that if I spend half an hour, 1 hour on the treadmill, it's going to solve all my problems in terms of achieving a weight loss goal?
No, and I think Inder touched on it really well. Everybody is different, and it's not one size fits all. I've worked with young people of sort of 20 years old all the way up to sort of 70, 75. Now, working with CEOs as well that I've done over the past 5 years, everyone's lifestyle is different, and everyone requires a different amount of food or different meal plans if you're going to give someone that to fix, especially their performance at work or performance to live a healthy lifestyle. So for me, it's about, with the exercise, it's about when people come to us doing better with what you've got rather than finding more time or more exercises to try and put into their sort of plan that, that they might not be able to stick with. So, with the CEOs that we do work with, they live busy lives and have got busy schedules. Getting them to go to the gym potentially for an hour each day that might not be helpful for them because they just can't fit it in. And if you're then starting to plan those things within their diary and then not then be able to do it, they then feel like they failed. And I think you've got to set up your client for wins. So it's as an expert in sort of our field, it's working, okay, what is their lifestyle like? What exercise fits into their life the best? So, you've got different training methods, you've got strength training, you have high intensity training, but, it's not, strength training isn't for everyone because they might not have an hour, but it's okay. If we've got 30 minutes a day to be able to work out, can we provide sort of a HIIT style workout with weights so they're getting the best combination of strength and sort of cardiovascular work? But I wouldn't say there's one training approach that works the best.
Yeah. And would you say that given that people that you work with have limited time, it's better to focus on resistance and strength training rather than endless hours on a treadmill or a bike?
There's so many benefits to strength training. You just look at things like bone density, muscle mass, and for us, we try and get people to more focus on sort of their NEAT, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is basically exercise that people do on a daily basis. So can we make them create better choices within their day? So instead of driving to the train station, can they walk, or cycle? From the train station to work, do they usually jump on in a cab? If that's the case, can they then go walk to the office? Creating that level of activity, which obviously helps with, their cardiovascular, that will be the focus there, so that in the gym we can actually focus on their strength training, which I think has more benefits to the human body than someone jumping on a treadmill for an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. And so key, as you say, muscle mass, bone density, all of that. And muscle is a metabolically active organ. So basically, the more muscle mass you have, the more calories you burn, in effect. And as you say, NEAT, this non-exercise activity thermogenesis, adding in up to the 10,000 steps, like you say, walking to the office, getting off one stop before on the tube, walking the extra distance, taking the stairs instead of the lift. So many simple things we can do. If you're going to the supermarket, park not in the disabled bay, which you shouldn't do anyway, but park in a bay that's furthest away so you can get in a capacity of 400 steps. So 400 there, 400 back, 800 steps, you know.
I think that's trying to get people, when it comes to like weight loss, people think it's this really hard, you know, they're going to have to change their whole lifestyle to be able to lose weight, when realistically there's so many small things that they can do which they go through every single day without them knowing, that just by implementing those small changes can have the biggest effect. So it's just getting people to understand that. And you know, if you can't get to the gym 3, 4, 5 times a week, wherever it may be, there are other things that we can do to still help them on their journey to weight loss.
Yeah. So can you train at home?
Of course, I mean, COVID was a massive thing for sort of the fitness scene because people couldn't go to the gyms. So what did people do? Just stop? No. So it was, you know, home workouts, classes on Zoom, you know, when you could go out for a walk. So that actually, I probably would say, was a positive impact in terms of people understanding that they don't need the gym facility to still be in shape.
Yeah. I mean, we saw that Joe Wicks guy. He was all over the place, wasn't he?
Yeah, and there were so many people coming up with different classes, even myself. Obviously, we had to change a business model because I couldn't see clients in person. So it was, okay, how do we reach those clients, but reach a wider community that, you know, people had time on their hands. That was, I think, time is the biggest factor in a weight loss journey or any fitness journey, because if you don't have the time to do it, how do you get there? So in COVID, people had the time. So it was quite good to sort of teach people that, you know, they can implement it in. And once you've built that habit, when we came out of COVID, some people stuck with it. So I still see clients on Zoom because it's distilled into their lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think something really important is that we need to discuss is about coaching element of helping people achieve a health and fitness goal. So with regard to the drugs, for me, it's so important that people are seen, they have a physical examination, their height and weight and basic metrics are taken, their bloods are taken, because these drugs are not without side effects. They can affect your pancreas, they can cause liver problems, they can cause gastric side effects. So it's so important for us to take a full history, take the basic situation of that patient into account before we even say that you are actually eligible for these drugs. And in terms of the coaching and the diet and the exercise, I'd like to talk to you guys about that. So how can you help someone with emotional eating or hedonic hunger and things like this? How do we help the people with that?
So it goes back to what I said right at the very beginning. Why do you want to lose weight is the first question. And you really need to understand your motivations for it. Because I actually have quite a high rejection rate. So roughly 60% now of patients who come and see me for coaching, I will often say, you're not ready for change because you're going to be a 2-week wonder. I call them a 2-week wonder. 60% because they're just not ready to make that change, because as I say, weight loss is a long-term journey of multiple mini changes over a very long space of time. So weight loss is categorically a journey, not a destination. So firstly, understand your motivations for change. Next, understand your lifestyle. As Myles said, it's not realistic. If you want to gain muscle, for example, and work out, if you don't have the time, you're barking up the wrong tree. So the next thing you need to, my job is to try and the next thing on the list is understanding your lifestyle and your daily routines. Because as Myles has said, if you don't have the time, it's very, very difficult to make any kind of change. So the changes have to be realistic and implementable, 110%. Next, understanding your comfort eating and your relationship with food is vitally important. What do you do? The third question I always ask patients, when you're stressed, what's your coping mechanism? Some often don't know. Some it will be going for a run, some it will be smoking a cigarette, some it will be shouting at the wife and the kids. But often, unconsciously, it's food. They go to the fridge. And I certainly see that with relatives. If they're having a busy day, they go straight to the fridge, grab a packet of chocolates or whatever it may be, something sweet or savory, and they munch and munch and munch, especially with the sort of the middle-aged, busy sort of executive clients that we see, constantly on the go, munch, munch, munch. And the devil is in the detail. And there's a neurosurgeon, his name is Raul Jandial, and there's a saying that will always stay with me that is super, I think, very relevant to this conversation, which is It is not the treats that break us, it's the habits. It's not the treats that break us, it's the habits. So it's, again, really understanding the nitty-gritty of the patient's life and how they deal with stress, understanding those where the patient is at, meeting the patient where they're at, and then gradually implementing small, realistic changes over a long period of time. That's why our program is 3 months, because it does take at least at the minimum 3 months. I say, people don't like me saying this to them, but it takes 6 to 12 months. Realistically, 12 months to make a big change. I mean, to give you an idea, for example, I was sensitive to gluten for a long time. But when I went out for a family meal, what would I do? I'd have a pizza, or I'll have a bit of naan bread. We all do it. There's always a food that someone's a bit sensitive to, or we know they shouldn't have, but we do it. And anyway, it took me the best part of 3 years, actually, to finally get the message that every time I eat gluten, I get bloated. So it's a long-term change. It's a long-term change. And patients need to kind of really understand that. It's a long-term change. And it's hundreds, if you like, hundreds of little changes over a long period of time.
Yeah, okay. And again, with yourself, Myles, how do you help clients achieve that long-lasting change in their life?
I think you touched on a point of, emotional eating, stress eating. Working in London itself, you've probably got a prep every 20 yards, which, you've got your croissants, your cakes, your cheese and bacon turnovers, food that, would be the go-to for a lot of people. And working in London, there's a lot of stressful people. I work with clients that suffer sort of chronic stress. So if they're not prepared, then the first thing they'll go to is the most convenient, the most easiest thing. And that usually is the wrong type of foods, unless they've got a plan in place to be like, okay, when this situation happens, this is what I'm going to have. Whether they've got silly things like certain snacks in their drawer in the office, when it gets to a time where they are hungry or they're stressed and they're craving something, they've got foods in their cupboard that you could be in, like high in protein, nutrient dense foods that help with their performance. We work in co-working spaces, and on each floor they've got snacks. What are those snacks? Biscuits, sweets sometimes. And you're thinking, we're not really teaching people how to fuel properly. Don't get me wrong, there's a fruit bowl next to it. But again, what's people's first choice when they're stressed? It's not going to be the apple. So for us, it's okay, when we meet clients, it's understanding, right, okay, when these situations come up, what have we got in place to make sure it, one, keeps you on track to your goal, and also helps with your performance in work, so you don't have those dips and those lows during the day, and you've got that sort of brain function where you're not dipping all the time. So it's about just getting them to understand what types of food's good for them, and having a plan in place when these things do occur, because they do. You can't negate and take away stress, especially when people live in busy lifestyles. But it's about managing that.
Yeah, so I think what you're both saying is, if you fail to plan, then you're planning to fail, basically.
100%.
Absolutely. And life, you can have chefs, you can have the best infrastructure supporting you, but life is going to throw stuff at you. And it's about recognizing when you feel like you gravitate towards the junk, and actually understanding the emotions behind it. Because food, whether it's food, sex, drugs, gambling, these are just devices for the brain to soothe some emotion that we're not recognizing.
Yeah, what's that song, Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll? I can't remember the band, but I think that's a very apt song here. So what I was going to say is that the medication that is prescribable is definitely useful. There is no doubt about it. It has helped several people, and it will help many more going forward. But this is not what we want people to be on long term. I think we need to instill in them that this is a starting block. That from this, let's say if you have, and I have a patient whose BMI is 38, he is not going to suddenly go down the gym, and he's not going to change massively the way he eats. He has made some significant changes in his diet. I'm trying to get him to track his steps. He won't even get a little simple tracker, like a wearable tracker. But these things take time. So the drugs that he's lost 9-10 kilograms in the first month. So this seems so wonderful and magical, but if we are going to keep people on these drugs, we're just instilling the wrong beliefs in their mind. I think, as you say, simple things that can be done easily. So for example, if you're in a big office block, what you want to do is get out in the sunshine, get the sunlight on your skin, get out. I know we've talked about this in the past, Inder, about decompressing your nervous system. What are things that you can do to help decompress your nervous system? How can you help improve your mood? Because improving your mood improves your physical well-being. What about in terms of the office, Myles, things like sit-stand desks or under-the-desk treadmills? What do you think about these type of things?
They're all good things that can be implemented quite easily. I probably would suggest that understand that most offices do have sort of sit down and stand up desks anyway. But, things like walk and talk, that's a big thing. If you've got a meeting with someone and, you don't need the screen for data or anything like that, get outside. Go and have the meeting outside. Do your steps. It's an hour of your day where you would have sat down usually. So can you then convert that into something that's going to benefit you and your health? Then do it. I think walk and talk probably, especially in the summer, it is a no-brainer. But unfortunately, I think going back to the weight loss drugs, there are positives for them, but positives for the right people. I think I have had many conversations with current clients, clients that booked in for consultations, and it's a topic that does come up, especially with weight loss. And unless you're type 2 diabetic, or you're over a BMI of a certain 30 and you are obese, and the drug is going to help you to give you that kick start to a healthy lifestyle, then great. And then that's something that we can look at working with that type of person. But just for somebody that wants to lose a little bit of weight, the drug doesn't teach you anything. It doesn't instill any good habits. You're finding a quick fix for weight loss that you don't need. And I think the most important thing with this, especially with the drug, people are getting it from anywhere. And that's the dangerous thing. And I know people sort of in our circle that are taking the drug, and it's someone that doesn't need it. They're not obese, they haven't got type 2 diabetes, but they're going on holiday in 2 months' time, and they're not, for some way, they're not happy with how they look. So for them, it's like, well, instead of doing the hard work of trying to change my diet or doing more exercise because I don't have the time, their first thing is, let's go and take Ozempic, Mounjaro. That's the issue. And I think we, as health professionals, need to get people to understand that that isn't the way forward. The drug is right for some people, as long as you're being taught habits with the nutrition, with the physical health that you instill. So when you don't have that drug anymore, that they're not going to go back to where they was.
If I could just add, at the end of the day, these weight loss jabs are a drug, and drugs are just tools. They're just a tool that doctors and healthcare practitioners have. We live in a day at the moment where we live in an age when we see diet as also more of a tool, especially in lifestyle medicine. Diet is a tool, but diet is a lifelong thing. People see diet as well as I do it for 6 weeks and I'll lose X pounds. But diet is a long-term thing. You should enjoy a nutrient-dense diet for the rest of your life. These are lifelong habits that will serve you for the rest of your life. Drugs are tools.
And actually, that's so important to think about the physiology of and how we eat. So, for example, a couple of things spring to mind. How do my kids eat? What happens when the kid's at the dinner table and they say, "Baba, I'm full"? What do the parents normally say to that child? Finish it. That's so wrong. The child inherently knows that the satiety level has been reached. So they have a physiological mechanism within them that says, "I'm full, I need to stop eating." And the parent's like, "No, you've got to finish. You've got to finish your plate." Well, first of all, don't put too much on the plate, so they're not going to leave food. And secondly, when they say "I'm full," actually believe that their body is speaking to them and saying, "I'm full, I shouldn't be eating anymore." And I think we have gone so far away from that with snacking, constant eating. It's actually good to be hungry sometimes, because hunger is not a bad thing. It's actually beneficial, and it's a physiological response. And with regard to that, when does digestion actually start? When does the digestive process actually begin?
So some people think it starts when the food's in front of us and we're smelling the food and taking in the food before we touch the food. But there's a lot of research in neuroscience that suggests just thinking about food actually triggers the digestive juices to be excreted and for the gut to prepare to digest food. But unfortunately, we think about food, especially the kind of clients that we see, tend to think about food a lot more, and certainly in the wrong ways than they should. I'm reminded of a guy called Paul McKenna, who's a hypnotist. I don't know if you know Paul McKenna. And he wrote the most fabulous book that I recommend to a lot of clients called Freedom from Emotional Eating. Hopefully it's still in print. And there's a line in there that will never leave me, which is, obese people are the only people not to think about food when they eat food. And their minds, for some reason, go away from food when they're eating food. They are completely mindless. So just to sort of touch on that point, mindful eating is absolutely crucial, because otherwise, you're not going to be cultivating a mindful approach and a present approach to eating.
Yeah, so yesterday, we actually eat relatively early in the day. So this is another thing I think that's important to think about. But my wife was cooking chili chicken, and it was cooked in sesame oil. I walked into the kitchen, I was like, wow, that smells amazing. And as you say, the saliva started to get produced. I started to think about food. And even now, just happening to me right now, thinking about the smell. So people think digestion starts when it enters the tummy or when it enters your mouth, but it's a long before then. And that's so profound. What you said, what Paul McKenna wrote, is that obese people, the only time they don't think of food is when they're eating. So mindlessly eating is, I've never actually thought about that. It's just so weird. How can you be mindless when you're eating? If you have food as a family event, you sit down with your family, that builds your social network. It produces good hormones, dopamine, serotonin, all of these things that are actually really beneficial for you. So I think we eat so wrong. And Myles, you were saying about there's a Pret at every corner. Just grab something and go. Grab and go is the worst type of thing you can do.
Absolutely.
Unless you're planned. So what we try and do with a lot of our clients, that don't have the time to meal prep, which most people don't. Some things, the easy things that we try and do is, if you're cooking dinner, that's something that most people do every night, hopefully. Cook more than you need. Cook an extra 2 portions, leave it for a lunch, and then that way you're having nutritious meals for lunch the following day, and you're then prepared. Rather than going on a Sunday, for example, I need to set aside 2 hours or an hour to meal prep for the week. If you don't have that time, you can still do that during the week. But going back to the grab and go, is that if there are people like that, then it's been planned to know what types of food in that shop fuels me the right way and helps with my performance. So, Pret do have your sort of salads and protein high enriched sandwiches that are sort of under 500 calories. So it's okay for my clients. These are the go-tos if you're in this scenario. So I think anything is just, as long as you're planned, you know what to have, those things are okay still, if need be.
Do you advise clients to calorie count?
I think everyone should understand what they should be eating and consuming. I think that's the issue, is that people aren't aware. If you look at foods that people think are healthy, your avocados, your eggs, simple things like that, nuts. If you're on a weight loss in your sort of journey, those things are healthy, but they're high in calories. So you having a whole avocado for lunch on a bit of bread could be more calories than a tuna sandwich from Pret. And at the end of the day, sometimes, like we've touched on previously, is when it comes to weight loss, it's make sure you're burning more than you're consuming. So it's getting them to understand, okay, what types of food they're having, is it reaching their goal? And when people, once they start building a habit, I know when I'm trying to lose weight, I know what I'd have for breakfast, what I need to have for lunch and dinner, whereas other people don't. So it's about just getting them to understand, if there is a calorie target and a goal, we use MyFitnessPal for the first day, work out if they're way above what they need to be or if they're below. then give them sort of solutions, and then just saying, right, okay, you don't have to count every day, but this is the target, and if you're going to have carbohydrates, this is how much you've got to have, no more. So yeah, I think as soon as you start getting people to track every day, especially the clients that we work with, they're laughing in your face. They don't have the time to do that, but it is good for them to understand.
100%. One exercise that I ask clients to do is take a sharing bag size of Skittles and then take the equivalent weight in walnuts or Brazil nuts or a nut of your choice. Try and eat the Skittles. It'll be quite easy to mindlessly eat those Skittles and then feel hungry quite quickly. Now try eat the nuts.
Yeah.
You can't eat more than a Skittles worth of nuts. And that is because of the fats, that's because of the structure. There's a lot more the plant matter that the gut has to deal with. So that is absolutely crucial to understand that calories from nuts are very different from calories from processed carbohydrate foods like sweets and things like that.
Yeah, and so I think I would tend to generally agree, but I think the calories in, calories out model is so simplistic. It's super simplistic and is far too basic, because I know you quoted that study where they gave people just granulated sugar and butter and they lost weight, but A, that's not sustainable, and B, when you're spiking insulin, because as we know now, there's more and more research that basically almost every single metabolic condition is due to insulin resistance. So if you're spiking insulin, so what happens? You eat carbohydrates, especially refined carbs, your insulin level goes up, it metabolizes the carbs, and that's broken down. But you do that repeatedly, then your body becomes resistant to insulin, you can't metabolize the carbohydrate. So I think, as we've discussed, being aware of what nutrient-dense food is, what that means, prioritizing protein more than carbohydrates. Not saying you should. I love carbs. As I said, I had rice yesterday, so it's not that I don't eat carbs, but just being aware of that. And then, MyFitnessPal, I've used it before as well. Really helpful app. So I think just instilling that understanding in patients and clients that, look, you can be a bit obsessed with calories, but that shouldn't be the be all and end all.
Absolutely. And I always say, in theory, I could strap a patient to a chair or a client to a chair and restrict their calories to say 500. I can give them 500 calories of almost any food. Will they lose weight? 110%. The research is absolutely black and white about that. But we're not strapped to a chair. We have emotions. We're humans with emotions. And the emotional systems of the brain are intimately tied to our motivation for food and reward. And that goes back to when we were hunter-gatherers. Our bodies, our brains needs to find a way of motivating us to hunt so that we can survive for food. And what patients don't understand is when they're stressed, for example, the emotional centers of their brain are overactive, and that stimulates the desire for foods to quell uncomfortable feelings internally.
Yeah. And I think we're trying to teach people good eating habits. Okay, there is research about fasting, positive impacts, potential negative impacts, like anything. This weight loss drug that's around, when people take it, it's about it stops, produces that satiety in the body, and it stops them from feeling hungry, which is great. But what it might then lead for people to do is, skip your breakfasts, skip your lunches, which, from a performance aspect for me, if clients are doing that and they're training, how does that affect their training session? What sort of training then can you do with them if they've not actually fueled their body correctly? So, if we are prescribing someone these drugs, we probably don't want them to do that. It's still teaching them to eat little and often, to be able to, like I said, enhance people's performance.
Absolutely. And I'm a huge advocate of the idea that fasting when stressed is a very dangerous idea, or even training when stressed can potentially cause more problems, because you can create chronically high levels of adrenaline and cortisol, which can corrode the arteries, increase the risk of heart disease, increase the risk of diabetes, and it can actually potentially be a big setback as well. So that's something else that people should be aware of.
Yeah. And so I think also, we haven't touched upon it, but the importance of sleep is, if you're not getting enough sleep, all the food and all the training that you're optimizing is not going to be in vain, but it's going to be much harder to keep that going, I think. So
sleep is probably one of the most simple things that people can focus on. But again, from our aspect, is, you know, it's not about sleeping for longer, it's about sleeping better. So, you know, people's lifestyle might mean that they only get 6 hours of sleep. You know, 6 hours, you know, it's enough as long as you've had 6 hours of quality sleep. Most people have broken sleep. Every client that I have has some form of, you know, they wake up during the night, um, they feel tired in the morning. So if they feel tired in the morning, how does that affect their training session? If it affects their training session, is it working them towards their goal? So for us, it's about, you know, what advice can we give our clients to make their sleep better, rather than going to them, no, you've got to sleep 8 hours, when realistically 8 hours might not be an option for them just because of their lifestyle.
Absolutely. It comes back to emotional regulation again. I haven't met an overweight client who wants to lose weight and improve their health, who doesn't get home from work, sit on the sofa, on their iPhone, scrolling through social media, scrolling through emails, having an argument with the wife at the same time, winding themselves up before they go to bed. And it's not a sustainable way. The studies are very clear that if you go to bed more stressed or restrict your sleep, weight goes up because metabolic rate becomes slower and disturbed.
Yeah, and I think what we're all alluding to, is the hormonal basis of this. So with raised cortisol, raised adrenaline, and there is ample evidence that when these stress hormones are high, it will lead to metabolic syndrome, will lead to weight gain, all of these type of problems that no drug is going to solve. So I think, you know, the drugs are helpful, but you wouldn't, like you're saying, Myles, you would take the drug for a holiday. You wouldn't just go and have bariatric surgery for a holiday. So I remember 20 years ago, when I was a junior doctor, bariatric surgery was all the thing. We're going to reverse type 2 diabetes. We're going to cure obesity. And loads of people had it. But where are they now? What's the situation?
There's research that shows actually the stomach re-expands and adapts.
With using the drug, you know, these people that potentially it will benefit, you know, what are they at risk of? You know, are they at risk of, you know, that they've got high blood pressure? Are they at high risk of heart attacks? So, you know, for us, it's okay, how can we help this person get to a certain point where then they can then do certain things? You know, if I've got a severely obese client that comes to us, people get down, you know, with the type 2 diabetes, to help them get to a certain point where they can start actually focusing on their, you know, nutrition they can do anyway. But getting to a certain point where they are healthy enough to be able to go and do these certain activities.
And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I need to emphasize again, emotional regulation. The drug or the jab is a tool to help people in the short term to reduce their risk, as you say, or of heart disease, etc., diabetes. But it comes back to recognizing, getting back in touch with why you're eating in this certain way, the emotional factors behind weight gain. There are absolutely some patients who actually eat fairly normal levels of calories, but because they're very stressed and their mental state is not as well as it should be, they retain weight. I see that a lot, especially in women actually who want to lose weight. I don't know if you've seen that. They'll fast often and they'll gain more weight. So yeah, they restrict their calories down to say 500 and they will gain weight. So again, really getting in touch with the emotional reasons as to why you live your life the way you do is absolutely crucial. And
Yeah, and that's why I think a holistic approach is so important. Just having a drug, especially over the counter or online, that's just a disaster, and I certainly wouldn't advocate that. But having a drug monitored by a doctor with input from a nutritionist and a personal trainer to look at the whole picture. So a menopausal woman who's going through hormonal changes is going to be very different from a 40-year-old CEO running a big business. So it's not just getting the drug, whether it's prescribed or not. It's about who else is in that equation to help their client really achieve their goals. And I think that's what we're all actually here for. For me, the best outcome would be that the patient enrolls, they start the program, and they never have to be on that.
so that's why I absolutely love the program that we've put together, because we are like the one-stop shop. A patient comes who's busy, stressed, overweight, And we kind of just deal with everything together in a very stepwise, ordered, sort of methodical way. We're not just, here's a diet plan, here's an exercise plan, yeah, your body's all right, off you go. It's very much we're with you every step of the way, because everyone is different, everyone has different pain points, concerns, barriers to change, and that's why I love what we do.
I think the big thing is that, you know, we're working together on this one patient, and it's that cohesion between, you know, you're making sure like their blood levels are good, their GI side effects. I'm making sure that the fitness plan is developed bespoke to that person, so they're managing to be able to process the program properly, and for yourself, making sure there's a nutrition plan set in place for them to build habits. So I think for us, you know, we meet up every month to discuss that patient and to make sure they're on the right path. And if there's something that we need to change or develop, that's something that we can do. And I think that's the most important thing, is we have created a program where we've got cohesion in all aspects of, you know, the drug, the physical aspect, the nutrition, rather than someone just going sort of get the drug itself or...
Absolutely. And it's also about, you know, before even the health coaching starts, I ask the questions, how's your digestion? You know, because someone may not have Crohn's or some severe medical issue, but they may have a bit of IBS that generally medicine doesn't have a lot of tools for. So we optimize the health, get them ready for those changes. And it's just a really beautiful thing to see when someone comes to us a little bit all over the place, shall we say, and they leave looking like a new person, feeling much more vital, their brain function's better, hormonal cycles are better, their stress tolerance is better, and they look great and they feel great, and that's what it's about.
So no doubt these drugs are helpful, but the danger of doing it yourself, buying it online or just getting it from a pharmacy, you're leaving yourself open to unknowns, side effects, no monitoring at all whatsoever.
This is why I absolutely love the program that we've put together, because it is, like I say, a one-stop shop that brings every component of long-term sustainable change to optimize your health. That's what we have, and that's what we offer.
And you have to remember, we're all experts in our field. For us, it's about providing someone 3 experts that know what they're talking about, can work together to understand one client, rather than going to someone that does everything. I think that is what separates the program from most.
So if you were to give some advice to someone considering the jab who's looking to lose weight, what would that be?
So I always say, you wouldn't take your car to the garage and then work on it yourself. You consult expert. You wouldn't build a house without builders and an architect. So why would doing something with your health, including weight loss, be any different? You need to consult, or I'd recommend working with people who have done it, been there, seen what works, seen what hasn't worked, and really use that experience to help you and to hold your hand over a period of time. So yeah, seek help and understand that it's a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, I think my biggest advice would be, don't just focus on, you know, a lot of people are aesthetically driven. Don't just focus on the end product. The end product will be a byproduct of everything and every implementation of habit forming that you've created through your physical health, your nutrition, which will end up reaching you to your end goal. Don't just be so end goal driven. Enjoy the steps, the processes. Is a journey at the end of the day. And also you'll learn a lot about yourself along the way.
So guys, thank you so much for taking time out to come and chat with me on this podcast and share your insight and expertise with our audience. I'm sure it's been absolutely invaluable for people to hear and listen to what you guys do and how we can help them going forward.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's very good.
So as you've heard, you can get this jab by yourself, but why would you take such an important decision without help and guidance of experts? I'd like to thank Inder and Myles for coming on the show and sharing their expertise with us. And remember guys, true wealth is health.